All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We would love to introduce Quorum CEO and co-founder Alex Wirth to the stage.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Patrick, and good afternoon, everyone. Great to be with you all, and excited here to talk and dive into AI and how to future-proof your state government affairs efforts. So the core of this is everyone's hearing a lot of buzz about artificial intelligence, but in practice, people are saying, well, what does it mean to me? How are my peers using it? How should I be using it? And what we're going to do is give you 14 specific examples of how we're seeing government affairs teams leverage and use AI in the daily work that they're doing day in and day out. Now, some of these you might say, oh, that's 101, I'm already doing it. Great. Others you'll say, whoa, I've never thought of it, and guaranteed every person here will come away with some takeaway or some new thing that they previously have not thought about. I started Quorum about 11 years ago. We work with over 2,000 organizations. The best part about my job is I get to spend time across many of our customers, hearing the stories about how people are leveraging AI, pushing the limits and what's next and what's new. And we're obviously focused at Quorum about bringing that back into our product and enabling government affairs teams to come and leverage the technology most effectively. In today's presentation, we're going to be talking about all sorts of AI, stuff through Quorum, stuff through ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, the wide range of solutions. So whether you're a Quorum customer or not, you'll definitely get value from this. But the high-level framing that I like to start with is that we're at the start of a new innovation wave. And as a technology entrepreneur and an innovator, this is something I think very thoughtfully about, because when you look back at the last 40 plus years, we've had a series of waves that have led towards major adaptations and new technologies out there. The first, obviously, was the invention of the internet. We got Amazon and Google and eBay and Yahoo. And I mean, us can remember the magic of being able to download a song from the internet. And then came the web applications of Facebook, our first MySpace profile, sending money to someone online, Salesforce. And in 2008, in the midst of the great financial crisis, we didn't fully realize it, but with the invention of the iPhone, that would enable so many new companies, Airbnb, WhatsApp, Instagram, Uber, DoorDash, TikTok, Snapchat, Twitter, so many out there. And then it was quiet until the advent of cloud computing and that really coming into fruition, which was 2013, 14, 15. And as the innovation wave that Quorum came out of, that we saw with AWS and Marketo and Netflix and Dropbox, the ability to take massive amounts of information and go and put it in the cloud. And then the thing that I want to call out is it's been really quiet since then. It's been the same technology, the same internet, iPhones, servers, for the better part of 10 years. And obviously that all changed in late 23, early 24 with the release of ChatGPT. And now we're in this world of AI. And so thinking about, okay, well, what does that do for us as individuals, for professionals, and obviously for government affairs? Well, we sit in this immense world of information. So there's 128,000 bills introduced every single year across the state legislatures, 7,000 plus state legislators, 85,000 social media posts, and obviously a lot of executive branch officials to deal with. And it's honestly a perfect challenge for AI because it can help sort through all the noise that is out there. But the thing that I'm sure you're well aware of is that it is fundamentally changing how people are doing government affairs, and that the teams that are leaning in and leveraging it are getting an advantage over those that are not. So if you're just doing the same old, yes, you can do your job and it looks the same, but those AI native teams are getting a whole series of an AI advantage gap where they're able to do things that are transforming and totally differently. And that's what we're going to dive into in this presentation today. So super specific, here are the examples. Here's the real core of how public affairs professionals are using AI. And as Patrick mentioned, is you've got questions along the way, put them in the Q&A. They'll raise up at the top. We'll probably save and do most of them at the end, but we'll try and keep an eye out on them. So there's three phases here that I like to think about leveraging AI. The first one is focused on writing using AI. This is the most 101 and basic of them, and really came into fruition in 2024. Suddenly you can prompt Copilot or ChatGPT or Gemini and be able to ask it to come and share anything that's happening. So the workflow one that we like to start with is simply a digital twin to come and generate content. So you can prompt and train, whether it's with a custom gem or a individual GPT in Copilot or a custom GPT in ChatGPT, and create a digital twin that is either a colleague, a copy of you with specific instructions, specific writing, and use that to come and generate content. And by coming and giving it your own organization's voice, giving it past examples, giving it the detail and the writing style, you'll find that you're going to get a much more personalized response that resonates more and gives you much closer to a finished work product. So you can have many of these different digital twins. You can have one that might be your regulatory analyst. You can have one that can be a legal analyst. You can have one that's a copy of you and used for the writing that you're doing. You can have one that's more generic, but it's a really wonderful way to personalize and get even more effective content that is shared and sent out. The second big one is state-specific leave behinds. So the gold standard that has been basically near impossible is, could you have a specific leave behind for all 7,300 state legislative districts that are out there? Now, previously our minds would explode. There's no way. Most folks don't even have it for all 435 members of Congress. And it is now possible, using some of the prompts with AI, of saying, hey, here's my information file, and here's all the data that I have broken down by state legislative district. I need you to create a one-pager for this given state, or these 10 state districts, or these 10 state House districts or Senate districts. And that is now possible. And you all know from spending time in meeting with legislators, the most effective way to come and communicate with the legislators, tell them the impact in their district. Being able to say, we've got X number of constituents in your district, Y number of facilities, Z number of sales that are done every year, we pay X amount in taxes, makes them know, okay, this is the impact that I have for me. So I would encourage you to think about, one, how do you make sure that you get your data accessible by address? So whether that's constituents, individuals, advocates, members, employees, get your facility information, might be animal shelters, might be corporate facilities, might be distributions, product sales. And if you can get it by address, AI can come and help you get it by state legislative district, and then also come and help create those individualized one-pagers that give you the overview of what's happening in that state legislative district. This is another example of the teams that are using AI accelerating, because if you just have your same old state fact sheet, all right, it's relevant, but the legislator's gonna be like, yeah, great, you're helpful for the state, but like, what's in it for me? Whereas a team that shows up and is able to communicate, this is what's happening in your district and why you should support this issue, has an inherent advantage and is gonna be moving ahead from that. The next one here is AI policy and advocacy newsletters. So this case study comes from a trade association that sends out a series of email alerts over the course of the week about major policy developments that happen for their members' issues. And previously, it used to be this massive effort where they'd craft every email from scratch. They'd come and say, all right, well, we need to summarize this new court case, regulation, committee hearing, policy announcement, and email that out. And they were aiming to specialize it for their members. And what they built in Copilot is an agent that goes in and writes automatically that update for every single major announcement. So a court case comes out, new regulation, they drop that in and say, write me a policy update that I can send out to our members from it. And what they found, it was a massive productivity improvement that dramatically shortened the amount of time and effort necessary to send these policy updates to members. And they made it where it's so good to the point that they won't let anyone start writing a policy update unless it's going through the agent, because the agent is so much better at concision, at tone of voice, at being able to communicate the right info and keeping in the same format, that it saves them all a tremendous amount of time. So if you've ever thought about how do you keep employees updated, board members updated, individual coalition members and partners updated, you should be thinking about how to build an AI agent that is coming and helping you do this every single time you need to send it out, and can lead you to be a much more effective communicator and also do it in an even easier manner. If we've got anyone on that does a little bit in grassroots advocacy, think about the power of this with your grassroots advocates. They would love to know what's happening policy-wise. And so if you can give them something unique on every call to action, here's what's going on in the state, and oh, by the way, you want to write your legislator about it, that's super impactful in a way that probably would have been a little difficult of sitting and trying to read through and figure out how to make it concise and put it together. AI in action, AI differentiated teams having a big impact. Workflow number 4 is the policy architect. And so this is a big new one that everyone should be aware, but that is that you've got individual state legislators, governors, other government affairs teams, either with you or against you, that are asking these AI systems for different policy ideas and coming and using that in the dynamic and the work and the legislation that has happened at the state level. And the story I will share here is there was a government affairs team that was working on an issue in a given state, and the debate was going in a manner they didn't like, that was going to end up adversarial to them. And so they went into ChatGPT and said, hey, give me 5 policy ideas to come and address this revenue shortfall. And it popped up for the specific state, detailed ideas. They took those ideas straight out of GPT, called up their trade association in the state and said, hey, we want you guys to go take these and propose them to the governor's office and go and put behind it. And the trade association said, yep, can do it. Brought it to the governor's office. And 3 days later, the governor comes out and says, I've got a magic solution to our revenue shortfall. These are the 5 ways that we should solve it. And it was a near direct copy and paste of what came out from ChatGPT previously. I share that as that's what the AI natives and the AI enthusiasts are doing, and that's what you're up against day in and day out. And so you should be asking ChatGPT and Gemini or Copilot or Claude for those different policy ideas and using it to think about what is the best strategy and what are other ways to come solve a given issue. You also should be thinking about red teaming it, because those state legislators and governors and chiefs of staff and cabinet secretaries that you're going to be advocating for are going to turn around and ask AI the same thing. They're going to say, hey, is this a good idea? Give me 5 talking points for it, 5 talking points against it. Should I support this thing? And so you should be aware of, all right, what are the answers that are coming back? I'll flag one of the biggest things is many of our customers only have access right now to Copilot. And if that's the case, you're not alone, but to be aware that you've got legislators that are using ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini personally. And so you should be testing what Gemini and Claude and ChatGPT are saying when you talk about your policy issues, because they're each going to have their own view and their own part of it. And then the bonus tip that I will share, and we can probably have Patrick and Molly send this out with the webinar summaries, you should be thinking about how your content is getting included in these large language models, so your ChatGPT, Anthropic, and Gemini. And we built at Quorum a very simple test page that you can put any website in, and we'll tell you how effective you are at being incorporated into the models. Because what you want to be doing is have your policy papers, your position statements incorporated in, because then ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude comes back and says, hey, this is the right policy ideas. And then it seems super official even when you influenced it. Now, again, there are many organizations out there right now working to influence the results of AI. And so it's either you're leaning in or you're getting left behind. And there's the biggest quick tip on, okay, well, how do I do it? Q&A is the best format. Because what the AI systems are looking for, what's the question, what's the answer? So you should have a page on your website that's Q&A about the policy positions. Why do you support this? Why is this a good idea? What's the best way to solve this? Why should this bill be enacted? Putting those pieces in makes it more likely that an LLM is going to come and pick it up. So that is writing with AI. And if you are already overwhelmed, I hate to tell you that that was mostly what was focused on in 24 and early 2025. And really is the first step of leveraging and using AI. So if you've been like, oh, that is so 101, we're getting more advanced. And if you're like, oh my God, I'm doing none of those things, it's a great place to start. But really what has come to fruition over the course of the last year is the age of the chatbot. And that is that we all have individuals, chatbots that we're accessing day in and day out, whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, Claude, etc. And so how can you be using these more effectively and using these in the work that you're doing day in and day out? And so the first ones of these is making sure that you're setting a policy lens filter across all the work that you are doing. So you can train your chatbot, no matter what it is, to know about you, know about your organization, give it your policy priorities, what you're concerned about, what you're working on. And throughout everything that it does, from writing content to reviewing bills to summarizing committee hearings, it will then be aware of how it should be looking at things and a smarter version of you, and highlight, hey, I know that you are working for this nonprofit, trade association, or company, and you care about this issue. Did you notice this small piece that got added into the bill? And it makes the individual functionality so much more effective for you. At Quorum, we've incorporated this into the Quorum platform so that as Quorum gets to know you and you share information about it, we'll pull from your website the policy priorities that are on your website that we think and use AI to identify will be relevant to you, as well as any documents that you upload, and then distribute that across the Quorum platform. So you get custom bill summaries from it. You get individual personalized meeting prep. You get those specific details that come in. And that then makes it so that it makes it way more personalized in terms of what you were working on and doing. The next one comes to being able to chat with relevant documents. So this is a really cool piece where if you're working through a really deep regulation, maybe a 50, 100-page bill, maybe you've got 10 different policy reports, 10 bills across 10 different states and press releases, and you're trying to make sense with it all, AI can be a wonderful tool to come and pull all this together. So at its most basic level, you can upload a PDF to any of the chat bots. You can go in and ask Quincy and Quorum and say, hey, I want to chat with this bill, chat with this committee hearing, chat with this regulation. And you can start to get incredible insight and ask for a basic summary. You can also ask, hey, how is this going to be funded? What's the funding source from it? I asked one for a very specific acronym that I didn't know, wasn't defined in the bill, and I got the immediate answer of here's this acronym of this government agency that it's trying to impact that no one defined it. But the other cool one here is a software program that Google developed called Notebook LLM, and you can go and put up to 300 documents in Notebook LLM, and it can come and let you be able to access and chat across all those documents. And so it both can produce a report for you. It also, in kind of a fun way, can come and produce a podcast. And so you can have two people talk you through the issue and what people are saying. And you can ask it for someone who's for it and someone who's against it. Talk about a great way to get up to speed on a given issue or read through a given report. Or you can ask it for things and say, all right, draft me a bill given all this research that you know, or draft me testimony for a committee hearing that leverages all these 10 different reports that I know are big and what we've done in previous states. We've also seen this where people have put all of their previous responses that they've provided to state regulatory bodies in a given database or Notebook LLM or chat system, and then being able to chat across that to say, okay, well, have we ever promised X to a state government? Or have we ever answered it this way? Or you could also use it to come and draft the next one. And if you've got all your relevant documents, say, hey, I just got asked by Minnesota for this. Now I need to come and put together a response and put this information into it. I'll just share the example here at Quorum. We'll use it for information security reviews. So we put together all of our cybersecurity details, all the previous forms that we filled out, all the previous answers. It's hundreds of documents with hundreds of rows. And when someone asks and says, all right, do you require two-factor authentication? We pull it in, we've got the immediate answer that pops right out. So this is super powerful as you set it up, but it does take defining what technology you're going to use, where you're going to put it. And then that ability to chat with, get immediate answers, and draft new text is huge. All right, number 7 is meeting prep. So this is the biggest one. I think we've all been guilty of it, of winging it and going into a meeting. And you don't really know the legislator, you don't really know the staffer, you don't know the details, and you show up and say, I'm Alex, and here's what I want, and this is my issue. But you've got no personalized pitch. And this goes, again, back to that divide of where AI native teams are getting an advantage. Is AI now gives you the ability to search across all the things that they've done and find the best angle to come in and the best details that you know about this individual. So when we think about Quorum, we've got 400 million documents in the Quorum system, including every social media statement these legislators have ever made, every bill introduced, all the committee hearing statements, the documents, the transcripts, the testimony. You can get an incredible picture that's out there of these lawmakers and what they're interested in. But also, it's not just Quorum. Like, you can come prompt this in an LLM and get much more detailed information. And so at a bare minimum, I would encourage you to be doing this with whatever your preferred LLM is. But also, if you're interested in taking it up a next level, is leveraging the depth of the Quorum system so that you're getting that really granular policy detail and the details of who it is that you're coming and meeting with. And then the bonus part about this is that it should have access to all your historical interactions. So you know the last time that you have come and met with the individual, what they talked about, were there any follow-ups that were promised? Do they use your product, your service? Do they donate to your organization? Do they have a family member impacted by the issue that you're talking about? That's all table stakes. And as you know, if you can come in with a much more direct connection with the historical info, hey, I know you met with my colleague Patrick 2 years ago, it's just a way more powerful meeting than one where you're walking in cold and don't know the legislator. The extension of this is personalizing the pitch. So going back and thinking about this, all right, you might have 200 legislators in a given state, and you want to say, all right, well, I want to figure out what's the best way to talk with them about my issue. Previously, that used to be a massive pain in the ass research challenge where you were going through trying to pull all these documents, all these details. And now it is just a simple prompt that says, what's the best way to talk with this lawmaker about this issue? And going back through all those statements, all that information online, you can get personalized pitches for every single legislator. I think this is the new absolute gold standard, one that everyone should be doing, because it makes your lobbying and advocacy so much more effective when you talk about it and the things that they're passionate about. Maybe they're really interested in tax reform, and so tax is the way of talking to them in the fiscal budget deficit. Maybe they've got constituents in a given district who they know care about it, and they recently visited with an adjacent organization. You can pull from that. Maybe they're really big on the environment, and that's the connection. But each of these lawmakers has the own thing that gets them out of bed every day, and it's your job to figure out what that is, and that is now way more possible with AI than it ever has previously been. And so I would actively encourage you to be doing this because, again, your peers are doing this. And so it is, are you interested in getting ahead or not? Then we get to the really interesting one of the argument stress test. So this is a great way to prepare for a committee hearing, prepare for a contentious meeting, prepare and make sure that you are ready. And so what you can do is either leverage a system like Quorum that's already got all this information in here and use that to say, hey, help me stress test this argument. What's this legislator going to say about this given thing? Or you can prompt in your LLMs and say, I'm going into a meeting with this speaker, with this committee hearing, help prepare me and ask the toughest questions you can about it. And you can give it your committee hearing testimony. You can give it the individual bill and expect what questions are going to come back. I'll share here at Quorum, people have set up and have one of these for me. So they want to bring me a proposal, a business idea, some sort of piece, and they've set up previous feedback I've given, what I've said, what our company priorities are, what are the details, so they can come and anticipate what's Alex going to ask and how do we best get Alex to sign off and approve this. You should be doing the same thing with state lawmakers because you can end and make sure that you have anticipated questions that you won't and get even ahead. And what we're seeing is people who actually create digital twins of lawmakers themselves so that they are fully aware of everything the lawmaker has said, what they're most likely to ask the questions about in the detail. And then when you feed in your details to that digital twin, it helps come and pull that back. Again, we've put this in Quincy, so you can tee up and ask Quincy about this for any lawmaker or legislator with all the documents all preloaded. But you can also do this outside of the Quorum platform, just showing the breadth of how many people are leveraging and using these AI technology and putting it into action. And then the last one here with the chatbot that is super impactful is the hearing scribe. So I was with someone around the NGA meetings, and we were together in Uber, and I was saying, hey, what are you doing for the rest of the day in Washington? They said, oh, well, I got to go back to my hotel room and come watch the state committee hearing. And I have to say that is so 2023 and 2022 because there are now transcripts available through Quorum and other platforms for every single state legislative committee hearing that is out there. And so no longer is there a need to sit for 2 hours and hear all the testimony when you can, one, get the transcript, but two, even better, turn around and start asking it. And so if you personalized your AI system, it knows you, knows what you care about, and then you say, hey, were any of the issues that I care about mentioned in this? Or how did they talk about my individual issue or my bill or my organization? Or give me a summary of how Democrats position this issue, or were there questions that Republicans asked? You can ask all of that and it's immediately accessible. And then the even better part is you can also turn around and create a quick summary and send that off to whoever you need to in your organization and say, well, what happened in this committee hearing? Boom, ready, set, there you go. And that's off in Central. So this is all live in the Quorum platform now, where we're doing all the state committee hearing transcripts. We're also doing it for all the congressional committee hearings. And you can chat and access it, but you also can go and get it too online. Some of the states will put out hearings. Some of it you can get from YouTube and you copy and paste the raw text. It isn't perfect, and there's some refinement that we end up doing on our side, but it ends up being way more impactful when you can put that into AI, whether it's Quincy or Copilot or Gemini or whatever it might be. You'll find it's a tremendous time saver. And then you think about being able to be in all the committee hearings across all 50 states that are relevant to all your issues. That's a massive productivity improvement and a really, really big thing. All right, so that's the chat bot. And this is the part in the last section that we've got. We've got about 5 slides here. So if you've got questions, put them in the chat. And also if you want to vote on questions, we will go and answer the most popular ones first. But this is really the next era that we're entering in. I think this is 2026. So if you're already here, awesome. Congratulations. You're doing a great job. If you're not, this is where the world is headed. And that is the era of AI agents. And so the way to think about AI agents is that they are computer systems and technology that do work on your behalf and do it in a manner and an always on recurring loop. So when you think about the chatbot, you have to go prompt it and you have to say, hey, summarize every committee hearing for me every time the committee hearing happens. And as you've probably seen with AI, you can get a little tired prompting it, or honestly, you might just forget about prompting it or forget about that given thing. And so that's where when you can have an AI agent going in and doing the work on your behalf, it makes your work even easier, even lighter. And the best part, you get to spend more time with lawmakers and elected officials that actually matter and have an impact on your issues. So what are a couple of these agents and what do they look like? Well, one, now out there on the market, Quorum provided, is a bill tracking agent that can go through and review the 130,000 bills introduced every single year across all 50 state legislatures and identify the ones that are most relevant to your organization. So that is something that I know many folks on this call have traditionally done by hand, reviewing with search terms and looking at every bill. And the biggest thing is that we can now give you a relevance score that says, hey, these are the bills that are most relevant to your organization. And then you can go and review either the most relevant, i.e. 90% plus, 80% plus, 50, 60, you can go far down as is relevant to you. And then we'll be highlighting some new technology at NCSL that actually will go in and give a recommended stance, priority, and issue area for each of your bills that will come and help do the work for you. And where we're getting to and headed to with this is a world that the AI agent will just do all your bill tracking for you because it knows you, knows your previous issues, your organization, your website, what you've previously tracked. And so you'll get a dashboard that says, hey, here are your high priority bills. Here are the bills that you support, oppose, or watching. Here's the ones that are most relevant. And you won't actually have to do the quote unquote bill tracking, but instead you'll be going through to make sure that you're up to speed on the major issues that are happening and that are out there. So there will always be an option where you can say, hey, I do want to look at every single bill and I do want to be the one that assigns the stances myself. But as we think about the AI technology getting better and better, the models getting more advanced, this is something that is coming. And you just, again, think about the AI teams that are leveraging it and not. If you're leaning in, you're then suddenly save all that time that you're doing bill tracking and you can use it to get smart on the bills and actually do outreach and engagement and lobbying on the bills. Or you can go back and do it the manual way and go bill by bill and spend all the time trying to figure out what's happening and going on about it. So that ends up being a huge productivity accelerant, and I think one of the biggest things that will come and impact state government affairs teams. The second agent is a meeting prep agent, and this is one that we've built into Quorum, leveraging Quorum's data. You also have the ability to set this up if you've got access to your systems and can build agents internally on your side. But that is sending you meeting prep ahead of every meeting that you go and do with elected official. So we can plug into your calendar. We only look for individual calendar invites with people with a .gov email address. And then we can send you and say, hey, here's your meeting prep for this elected official or staffer at this time. And it says, here was the last time you met with them. Here's what they've most recently worked on. Here's the best way to pitch your issues. And so previously, that'd be a whole prompting thing that we as humans would have to sit and do. Now we just deliver that for you. Think about the time saving there. Think about running around a Capitol on a fly-in day with so many things happening. And then you can come and just say, boom, ready, set, there you go. And that information drops right in. So that's really impactful and a great example of that always on work that is just on, it's happening, it's proactively going, makes your life so much easier. So then the other side of that is, all right, you had a meeting. Well, okay, how do you get that information back into the Quorum system so that when you meet with 1,000 legislators a year, you remember what you talked about, the follow-ups, the information that had happened. And so both one, connecting with your calendar system, we can then send you an email alert and says, hey, you need to track and put in your meeting. And so it sits in your inbox until you have gone through and logged the meeting. But also we now have AI interaction logging that's speech to text. So you can put in and say, hey, I just met with Majority Leader so-and-so. We talked about healthcare. Here are the follow-ups. Here are the details. And we asked the chief of staff to follow up. And we'll do entity resolution to go and figure out, okay, the Majority Leader is this person's name, happened on this date. You can say the chief of staff. We know in our database the chief of staff is actually this person. Tag it to the automatic issue. And all of this then happens automatically. And so we've seen it as a major, major time saver than going and filling out tons of fields. And that's that always on loop where there'll be a human in the loop because we need the information from you, but it automatically comes through. And even better, we're also now populating that individual interaction using the details that are in your calendar invite. So super, super helpful. And then the last one that I'll highlight here is a policy communications agent. And so this gives the opportunity to keep state lawmakers, their staff, governors, AGs up to date with the work that is happening. And we can plug into the press release section of your website, whether that be your association, your nonprofit, your trade association, your agency. And then every time there's a new press release, the agent will go pull the press release down, convert it into an email form that is specifically targeted towards policymakers. and tee it up into Outbox. So you just pop into Outbox and say, here's who I want to send it to, and off it goes, and there you can send it. So the hardest part normally about keeping up policy, reputation, and communicating with the Hill has always been that ability to come and generate the content and then remember to do it. And now we just send you the email and say, hey, it's all ready and teed up. We just need you to go in and press a couple of buttons. And that is part of the automation. And then when you think about the impact, teams doing this, they're top of mind. They're in the inboxes of their legislators and champions. They're sharing the good news that's out there. People don't forget about them. And that's much more effective than a world where you are headed out and just see the lawmaker 1 or 2 times a year at a couple of events, and then they don't hear from you in the interim. So another example of an agent always on. But as you can get the sense, we're working very hard at Quorum to release a whole series of additional agents that can come and help do work for you on your behalf and make it much easier to do the work that you're doing day in and day out. But also more and more of the systems out there, whether it be a relevance, whether it be N8N, whether it be some of the agents available in Copilot, in agent specific to OpenClaw or to Anthropic's Claude. There's lots of ways to come and build agents. But you should be thinking, is there any task that you're doing repeatedly, day in, day out, every week? And how do you automate that so an agent's doing it for you? That is really this agentic era that we're in. And we expect much more of that in the months and years to come from the Quorum technology and from all technology more broadly. So those are the 14 different workflows, which are all the ways that we have seen people leveraging AI for government affairs, both using the Quorum technology and then also as well using additional of the LLM technology. My email is just alex@quorum.us. So if you think there's a great use case out there that I have forgotten, would love to hear from you and come and get that added detail. And curious if you've also got product ideas and things that we should be thinking about. We would love to hear that. But the goal of this is we want to make sure this is helpful for you all so that you're hearing about how your peers are using it and then knowing how to come and put it into practice in your day-to-day. And with that, we're happy to open up the floor for questions. We got a lot of great questions in the Q&A. So we're going to take them by the upvotes. So if you don't have a question and want to upvote, feel free. And also, if you've got a question, please do put it in the Q&A. We'll try to get to all of them. But Patrick, you want to take it away?
All right, let's do it. Like you said, we got a ton of great questions in the Q&A. So first off, let's answer Shayna's question. How can you test the responses from AI without releasing your specific data and it being incorporated into the greater LLM?
Yeah, so great question, Shayna. And this is something to be thoughtful on, is that on some AI systems, if you use them out of the box, they are set to a setting that says that they will incorporate your questions in Q&A into the training of the LLM. And this is why your organizations are being so thoughtful and specific about what you're allowed to use and what you're not allowed to use. And that if you have an enterprise agreement with a Copilot, Gemini, Anthropic, ChatGPT, Quorum, the information that you put into the LLM is not being used to train the LLM. And both very specifically in the Quorum terms or any of those other terms, that is super clear that we will not use information, the model providers will not use information to go and train those large language models. However, as mentioned earlier, there is a risk that if you have a team member who is frustrated because they only have access to one system and it's not doing well enough and it's using ChatGPT on their phone and they don't know to turn on the setting, then that information might be used to train the LLM. And in the specifics of it, it's not that it's necessarily going to be incorporated into the LLM, although there is a very, very, very small risk of it, but more that it might be used to train the LLM. And so that's the thing that people want to be really aware of. And that's why you should be using an enterprise system like a Quorum or using whatever the large language model is that's being provided by your organization.
Totally. All right. Next question we have is, what I'm curious about is how to use AI to cross-analyze bills, social media, previous experience, and other anecdotes about a legislator to find champions or predict behavior. Do you have any examples of people doing that?
We do, and lots of them. So one, we've certainly seen and heard lots of stories of people that will take bills that are similar or relevant on an issue across all 50 states and put them all into an AI solution saying, hey, write me a summary of how we're seeing bills on X issue pop up across all 50 states. That used to be a lot of analysis work. Now is a sub 1 hour project because AI is doing that effort and is a really powerful thing. And then the other part of it is being able to come and leverage and look across all this information of being able to query it. And this is just the biggest obstacle that you're going to run into is, okay, well, how do you pull all the statements someone has done, all the bills someone has done, all the social media someone has done, their bios, the press releases, all that data. And that's really where we continue to see Quorum having a differentiator, that we have all that data in the Quorum system. And so with Quincy, you can come and ask across that and say, who's going to be the best champion in this state? And that's also the wild part about AI is that the prompting really matters. And so you can say, just looking at press releases, who's going to be the best champion in the state? Or look at press releases, tweets, and previous bills for who's going to be the best champion around it. And that's where you can come and get detail. The other one that we've seen is we've seen folks use it to prepare for committee hearings, a little bit more on the federal level, but there's been a lot of success anticipating legislator questions because they talk about the same things in their tweets, press releases, media appearances in detail. And so when you figure out their talking points, you can then assume the questions. And we've heard stories of people having 70 to 80% accuracy in the ability to predict questions by using those previous statements. So lots of great examples there to leverage. And this also, I would go back to, you can use Quorum to do it, or Notebook LLM is probably leading the market in their ability to take tons of information and synthesize that. The other one would probably be Claude and having it give access to a series of folders on your desktop.
Totally. One of the big things I think about here is how, like, in addition to the models are trained on all the existing information that's out there, but like what separates like lobbyists and folks who work in government affairs is your ability to insert all that information that you've just gathered over time through coffee and dinners and like just your experience on the Hill. So being able to plug that into a system like Quorum of all your previous interactions, layering that on top of all the other data that we have in the system is huge to get that leg up from other folks. All right, next question is, given the specificity of the prompt, i.e. individual legislator details, district-specific data, what is the concern level for hallucination, especially given how bad it would be to bring up a fake personal detail with a staffer or a lawmaker?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and it is something that I think we all have to be aware of that AI can make mistakes and can hallucinate. I'll share just the funny story. I was getting ready to celebrate my 3rd wedding anniversary with my wife, and so I asked Google just what's the wedding anniversary present for year 3, and it popped up and it said it was cloth. And the night before, my wife and I were at dinner. I was like, "Oh, it's gonna be very curious to see, what you got me. I'm very curious." And she goes, "Yeah, I know. It was really hard figuring out what was the right leather gift." And I went, "It's not leather, it's cloth." And she's like, "No, it's leather." Well, turns out Gemini and the Google AI summary had the wrong information in it, and so we got each other opposite gifts. And and I'll be finding something leather next year for her. But I share that because that is real and it is a thing out there that you have to be aware of. Now, the really interesting one is there's 2 different technologies at play here. There is retrieval augmented generation, which is basically AI system retrieves information from a given thing, and then goes back and gives you the answer. And that is how Quorum Quincy is built. And that's also how most chatbots of any of the enterprise software that you use internally are built, where it's just defined to a specific data source. And then there's the training of the large language models, which is your Gemini, Copilot, Claude, ChatGPT. And in those are where there's more likely for hallucination, because that model wants to please you. It wants to be right. It wants to give you that answer and put it out. And it is much more likely to have a hallucination. So we've seen actually very limited reports of hallucinations, if close to none at all, from Quincy, because it is bound to only the information that we have in the Quorum database, which includes all the primary source. And so it's kind of like fishing, where we go and say, all right, we're going to go put the line out, and then here are the relevant things that we want. We collect those things, we bring that back. We're limited to what's in the pond. But in the broader LLM, it's wide open ocean. You don't know what you're getting. And it really, that ocean, bad metaphor, and clearly it's rehearsed, but wants to please you. And so you're going to get some random things that you might not be aware of there. So, Copilot was intended and named Copilot for a reason by Microsoft, in that it is a Copilot. It's not going to fly the plane for you. And it's something that you do want to go back and double check. But as you know about just how the technology works underneath, you'll find that using RAG architecture ends up being much more accurate and with much fewer hallucinations.
Yeah. I was talking to someone who was meeting with Kevin McCarthy, and it mentioned that he won the lottery. And it was like, there's no way, they totally hallucinated that. And they looked it up, and yeah, Kevin McCarthy won the lottery back when he was a teenager. So it's so funny, all the interesting data it's able to pull in. All right, next question here from Samra. Are all of these agents just for federal, or you can use it for state?
Yeah, so all these agents work for state, and that's the really cool thing that we've done across Quorum, is making sure that as we build technology for government affairs, it works at the federal and state level, and then also works for grassroots advocacy and PAC management. So all the things that I've talked about today all work for state legislative. And we've seen and heard examples of teams that are using day in and day out. So we would encourage you to be incorporating this into your state government affairs work.
All right, I have two questions now that are pretty similar. How can I convince my team that hates AI and constantly calls it out to start actually using AI at work?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, I would encourage you to focus on whoever your boss or manager is and make sure that they are aware of the magic things that AI can do. And I'm often reminded by when Teams and Slack were first coming out, like how did people get them adopted? And so you'd have teams, kind of rogue organization using Slack. And the biggest thing that always happened was said, all right, we'll get your boss to go use it, put a thing in Slack. And then when someone complains that they didn't see it, say, oh, well, it was in Slack, you need to be using Slack. And that was like the number one way to get people to go and use Slack. And so when you have, one of your managers, executives who's like, yep, I'm using AI, I'm leveraging it. Hey, have you done that with AI? Why don't I have a personalized summary? Why don't I have these details with AI? It will start to put pressure on the rest of your organization to do that. But to make that happen, you need to come show them the power that it can come do and what can happen. And so your ability to give them a summary of a committee hearing and say, hey, I can get this summary for every committee hearing out there. Like, why don't the rest of my team have summaries for their committee hearings? That's an example. There's some metrics that I needed this morning, and one of our team members pulled them, and I got a 6-page report of the metrics and an overview that was fantastic with great detail. And so you can start to tell who's using it and who's not, where it's like, whoa, that work product is so much better, so much faster. And that's really where I think you have to go and improve it. I'd also go and challenge you, go build an agent on whatever AI system that you're doing that's automating a given repeat task, and then go highlight and share your team and say, hey, here's the agent that I've built internally. And I'd also then encourage you, and we'll send out this deck in this presentation, send this deck around to them and say, hey, look, here are all the different ways that Quorum's seeing government affairs teams use AI. Like, these are all different ways you can be leveraging it. And if relevant and Quorum customer, we can have your account manager come and do a session just like this one and run through this deck and answer the questions that you've got about how we're seeing teams use AI. Because what we find is that peer education, both in terms of Quorum's internal AI adoption, as well as with the broader government affairs teams, that end up being the best way for people to know, hey, here's how it's happening. And then really it's also then finding the early adopters. And so you'll have peers across your organization that want to be adapting or leveraging or using AI. And I would encourage you, find ways that you can come and sync with them, learn what they're doing, and you'll learn even further, because that's the wild part. This technology is changing so fast. And so really key to come and stay ahead, and then also challenge people and say, all right, like, why aren't you using it? Why don't you like it? And probably the last thing I'll say is you got to carve out time for it. One of the hardest parts is, like, you have to learn it. We're all learning new tech. And in the chaos of our day-to-day and jobs, like, you actually have to sit and spend time. And that's how you can come and leverage some of these. And so carve yourself out a 2-hour AI power hour on a Friday afternoon and block it off. Obviously, I think we'll have a little bit of, hopefully, additional time with elections coming up before the storm and the sessions come back. And so leverage that and really make a concerted effort to be using the tech the best you can. And what you'll find is it will make your life so much easier once the travel really picks up and state legislative sessions come around in full.
Totally. All right, we have a similar question, which is, how do I convince my leadership to start using AI to review committee hearing transcripts instead of having us manually watch and take notes of each individual hearing? Additionally, what is the best way suggested to set up the AI bill tracker when we track both state and federal issues?
Yeah, so I'll take the second one, and someone else I think asked this in the chat. So the AI bill tracker is just on the left-hand side of Quorum. It's AI bill tracker. It is separate than our tracking boards, as we did a full overhaul of the technology. And so we would encourage you to set up, leverage, and use it. And then in the top left is the region selector for federal and state. And so as you flip that region selector, it'll put you into the federal mode or put you into the state mode, and you'll be able to come and see that. So very, very easy. And then the biggest one that I would encourage you to do is come and give your leadership your transcript and give the leadership the transcript that Quorum has produced and put the two of them side by side and say, hey, look, here's the transcript. Or even better, ask leadership, hey, what's the work product that you need out of this? And then ask for that work product. And if you go back to training a system and saying, hey, here's all the previous summaries that I've done of a committee hearing, I need you to take this transcript and give me a summary of it. You can come and show and say, hey, here's exactly what I'm able to come and produce related to this committee hearing. And then I would encourage you to calculate up the hours and say for every committee hearing, if it's 3 hours on average, an hour editing, I'm spending 4 hours of my time. You go to your executive and say, hey, I can come and find a way that's going to save 100 hours over the course of the next 6 months or 200 hours this year. What would you rather I do with 200 hours of time? Put that question to them. And that's why I think it's okay to have a little bit of a rumble of things done differently and say, look, I've got a better way of doing it. I'd like to talk with you about it. And also I'd highlight and go back to hey, this is what other teams are doing. And Quorum's put this technology out to 2,000 plus organizations that are all active in using it. It's either we're going to keep doing this the old way or we're going to be doing this the new way that everyone else is. And we need to be figuring out how we come and get ahead. And what I'll just conclude with here on this is that organizations are looking for those AI leaders internally. They want the people that are on the cutting edge of the tech. They want the people that are pushing the tech to the next limits, that are trying new things. This is an opportunity for you to shine in your team and organization, but you got to be a little bit willing to take a risk and push a little and say, hey, look, here's what the tech can do and here's how I'm using it. And I think what you'll find is you should get a really, really warm response to that. And then I might just offer, if you're not getting a very warm response, is it the right organization to be at over the long run? And I think you've got to ask that, because just when you think about the impactful work that you can do, it is even more impactful and even easier when you're leveraging and using AI.
Totally. All right. This next question, Alex, I'm also happy to take this one, is when it comes to feeding the algorithm or teaching the AI about your issue, does the format of the information on your website matter? For example, does it only see plain text, or can it interpret the context of videos, PDFs linked embedded on your website? I can do this one if you're down. So the gist of this is the crawlers that each of these platforms use is very similar to old school Google crawlers, where it's mostly looking for text. So if it's just text on HTML, that's great, super easy to read. If you have a PDF that's created by Google Docs or Microsoft, that's really easy for it to read. But if it's just kind of a scanned piece of paper, that's essentially just a picture, it's impossible for these crawlers to read. Same thing with video. If your video has a transcript by it, it's really easy for it to read and find that information, but it's not going to watch the video to understand the context of that video. Same thing with images. A lot of these crawlers aren't yet super complex and able to go and read all these images. Rather, it's going to rely mostly on HTML text. So what's the best practice here is making sure that you have as much text as possible. And what Alex was mentioning previously, is that the text that answers a specific question, like an FAQ page or any other ways of saying, okay, here's the question, here's the answer, is going to be your best bet in getting your info fed into the algorithm. Alex, do you have anything to add there?
I think that's great. You can tell Patrick comes from our marketing team, and so they know it even better than I do. But again, I'll just put the plus here for, and we'll send it out in materials, but the ability to go put your website in and see how it scores for AI readability. That's one of the best action items and takeaways from this, that you can have a really interesting conversation with your own marketing communications team, saying, hey, we got to get better at this, because again, your peers are doing it, and that's where you want to stay ahead.
Totally. All right, let's shift the conversation quickly to how are lawmakers you talk to using AI? Are they writing bills, talking points? Do you think that there are legislators that are acting more like AI than humans?
Yeah, so I think it's worth being aware, this is front and center for lawmakers, because they are humans and citizens just like all of us. And I think if you look day to day, we are all using it more and more and putting information in and asking it for details and info. And so I have both heard stories of people sitting on planes next to lawmakers and watching them use it. And they've said that is very revealing, because you get lots of 101 and how does this work and what should I do on X, and what's the best way to get reelected on it? When you also think about state legislatures and state legislative sessions, you've got a lot of people that are doing major policy in a short amount of time. You've got hundreds of pages of documents and amendments flying around. You've been working on it for sometimes 10, 12, 13, 14 hours a day, and you're sitting on the floor with limited staff moving quickly. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to sit there and you're going to ask, and you're going to say, hey, give me 5 talking points for this, 5 talking points against this. Is this a good idea? Should I support this? Should I oppose it? And that's where we see a huge, huge opportunity and just a expectation that lawmakers are using this because it lets them do their job so much more effectively and efficiently. And that goes to another reason of like why you need to be doing it as well, because if the lawmakers and the people you're influencing are using it, you need to know what it's saying and what it's suggesting and what it's doing. And it's really one of the best ways to come and do it. So I do think, more and more. And then the other part, to the question of AI versus human, just intelligence. Like, you're going to have a lot of lawmakers that just sound smarter. And so if you're sitting at a committee hearing, you might have a lawmaker that previously was not as effective at questioning and now has like 5 zinger questions for you. Like, this is the new world that we're operating in. And you got to be ready to go in and operate in that environment. And more likely than not, you can get a pretty similar set of 5 zinger questions that you can have 5 zinger answers right back for. But if you don't, you're going to get caught flat-footed. And that's the big, wake-up call and hopefully goal that you've come and received from this presentation.
Totally. I think a lot about the staffers, especially like the newer staffers who graduated college by using ChatGPT. And they're overworked and underpaid, and of course they're going to use ChatGPT, or they're going to use the tools in order to do their job a little bit easier. All right, let's end on this last one. I'm sure you're going to say Quorum, but what are the models that you'd recommend for folks to check out?
Yeah, happy to. So we use all of them. I use ChatGPT personally. We use Gemini across the Quorum organization. We also have a series of folks in Anthropic and Claude and use it actively, and we test things on Copilot. Of course, we use Quorum. The one that is most advanced right now is Claude, and specifically the Claude co-work functionality and the ability for Claude to do something called MCP, Model Context Protocol, to plug into internal systems. But it can access so much information in a major way across, our internal databases at Quorum, our Slack, our email, our Google Drive, and then it can string that together and do multiple pieces of work. It is really amazing. And obviously, Claude and Anthropic have Mythos and Fable that they've just released. The interesting take, I don't think Fable is as good as people have hyped it up to be, and that seems to be some of the initial feedback out there. It is very good at engineering, very good for more complex agentic long workflow tasks. But for what the folks on this webinar are doing day in and day out, Opus and Sonnet work really well. ChatGPT is getting a lot of kudos, mostly because they're giving lots of compute power for coding and queries and research. And so it ends up being a bit more cost effective. You also have many more consumers that are using ChatGPT. So that when you think about, okay, what are constituents looking at? What are legislators more likely to look at? If they're focused on ChatGPT, I think see folks doing there. Gemini really leads on the custom gems. The notebook LLM functionality is great. Gemini had its moment in kind of Q4 of last year, and I think still is good. It's just we're seeing better results from Copilot from ChatGPT and Anthropic. And then on the Copilot side, most of our customers are Microsoft organizations, and so they are leveraging Copilot. So if we had to guess, knowing no information, we would expect that most teams are using Copilot. It has gotten way better than it used to be. And so if you haven't used it in 6 months, you're going to see a whole different night and day experience with it. It's still not as good as ChatGPT and Claude. And so, you do have some limitations that come in with it. And then, just as mentioned, the interesting part about Quorum is that Quorum is fully loaded in with all of the data that we have in our database and all the data that you put into the Quorum system. So that's all rich and immediately has the context in front of you. And then again, we're using a different architecture, the retrieval augmented generation. So our answers are going to be more accurate, more specific, and won't have the hallucinations that might come in other models. But the core of this, and really the answer, you should be using many of them and be trying 2, 3, 4 different models to know what they use and do best. And you find the most AI folks are going to different models for different things based on what they need and what they find works really well.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Alex. And thank you all so much for joining us and sticking around to the end of this webinar. Over on the right-hand side of your screen, you can head over to the Docs tab, and we have a couple of links there. So first off, if you want to speak at Wonk Week this year, go ahead and click that link and submit a quick call for speakers. Also, if you want to learn a little bit more about Quorum State and some of the agents that we talked about today, go on over and click Learn More about Quorum State to, well, learn a little bit more. In the meantime, looking forward to seeing you at our next webinar, which is all about how state Gov Affairs pros are utilizing AI in their day-to-day. And until then, hope you have a great day.